report. Now, Cliff May is the president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And we want to find out what's going on with all this Iran situation. Cliff, welcome to the show, my friend.
Very good to be with you. Good morning.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Now let's see. What did you do? This was created. Tell us about the Defense of Democracies, Cliff May.
So we were created in 2001, and we were created in 2001 after conversations I had with such people as Jack Kemp and Jeane Kirkpatrick, who were very concerned that nobody was seriously looking at what we now call Islamists and jihadists and the kinds of attacks we had been actually having certainly since 1983, when the Marine barracks in Beirut, U.S. Marine barracks, were attacked by Hezbollah under the instructions of Iran, which, of course, had taken over our embassy 4 years earlier. In 1993, the World Trade Center in New York, for the first time, was attacked. In 1996, we were attacked at Khobar Towers, Saudi Arabia. In 1998, 2 of our embassies were blown up. The USS Cole was attacked in 2000. No one was connecting the dots and saying, what's going on here?
Wow.
And to make a long story a little shorter, they felt that it was necessary to have a think tank that looked just at terrorism, jihadism, Islamism, and tried to come up with the best policy responses.
And you know what, Cliff May? Thank you for doing that, because at least you're doing that, because I'm not feeling that the government is doing a thing about what you're talking about.
If the government had been doing that, if anybody had been doing it adequately, this organization would not have been created. That was my first assignment from them, was to see if anybody was looking at it. Universities certainly not doing so. Our universities, I'm sorry to say, have been pretty much taken over by people with Islamist sympathies, or at least in the departments of Middle East Studies, which is one of the reasons why nobody saw 9/11 coming.
Unbelievable. Now I'm looking at the headlines here, Cliff May. These Kenya victims. I mean, the bodies are still laying out there as we speak. Kids going to school. Bodies remain on the ground. I'm reading CNN. Ambulances are still at Garissa University in Kenya. 147 students killed. And they want to come here. I mean, so what can you tell us from your think tank, Cliff May, how to stop this, how to really be vigilant on this?
Let's start with this. When we began this organization, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, we thought, look, it may be difficult to figure out exactly what's going on, what the ideology is, who the movements are, but people would want to know. What it didn't occur to us at that time we didn't grasp, was that there would be such reluctance among such senior people to have any understanding of what's going on. We have an administration today that will only speak of what they call violent extremism and countering violent extremism. Yeah. And they don't want to understand that what's actually going on out there, which I think probably your listeners do get, which is that there are various toxic movements that have arisen within the Islamic world. Right. They derive from Islam. They are based on Islam. Doesn't mean most Muslims follow them or believe in them. But when you're talking about well over 1 billion Muslims, even a small percentage who believe in the concept that they have to fight a jihad against infidels, against apostates, against heretics. You're talking about tens and maybe hundreds of millions of people. So jihadism, as I would call it, comes in a number of different forms. Sunni and Shia, they are rivals. They sometimes fight each other. But what you're seeing, for example, in the case you cite, one of thousands of terrorist attacks we've had over the past 13 years or so, are jihadis attacking Christians. They also attack Jews. They attack Buddhists and Hindus when they can. They attack moderate Muslims and Muslims who are disobedient. And this is going on in an increasing number of countries around the world. We now have dozens of these organizations. The most prominent, obviously, are those such as Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. But the regime that rules Iran is also a jihadi regime, self-proclaimed jihadi regime. It's not that I'm saying it, it's what they say.
I know.
And that's why it's so consequential if we now allow this regime preaching jihad, preaching death to America, preaching genocide of Israel to get nuclear weapons.
Yeah, thank you. Because it was never addressed by the president. And just yesterday, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, called for a security meeting with the president of the United States over Iran nuclear deal. but clearly Bibi is opposed to this deal. But I don't see. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff May, that the president is. I use the word snitty for lack of a better. I'm not a man of intellect, so I use the word snitty, if you know what I mean, about the president. And he's got this thing for Netanyahu, and that's just going to hurt the world. I mean, am I reading this wrong?
No, you're not reading it wrong. Look, Netanyahu has reason to worry that this agreement is going to be counterproductive, that it's going to not stop Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the jihadist Islamic Republic of Iran, from getting nuclear weapons, that it is going to facilitate their getting nuclear weapons. Maybe slow it, but maybe not even do that. I'm not convinced this agreement even slows Iran's progress towards nuclear weapons. Now, obviously, for someone like Netanyahu, who is trying to protect Israel from a second genocide, or the Jewish people from a second genocide in less than 100 years, he knows what a threat this is. Why? Not because he thinks it might be, but because the mullahs, those who rule Iran, they say very clearly that their intention is to annihilate, to exterminate Israel. In fact, recently a high official, just within the last week, said that their plans to destroy Israel are not negotiable. At the same time, they say they only want nuclear power for peaceful uses, that they are not building a nuclear weapons program. By the way, we're negotiating them slowing a nuclear weapons program they do not admit exists, and they refuse to talk about or show to inspectors what work they have done on the militarization of nuclear facilities in the past, even though they've been told that this was part of what they're supposed to do. So Netanyahu is saying you are allowing our enemies to get nuclear weapons so that they could do what they say they're going to do, which is exterminate us. We have a problem with that. And Obama says, you insult me by saying you think I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's snitty. It's snittiness. 734 with Piscopo. Cliff May online. Cliff is the president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And before we let you go, Cliff, I see, El Sisi, the president of Egypt, he talks about this Islamic extremism problem. But I'm not hearing, and I quoted Bill O'Reilly last night. He did a great piece on his Open on Fox News, how no one's jumping up in defense of the Christians now. There is no joint effort to say there's a mass Holocaust of Christians that is happening. Just yesterday we saw in Kenya. Are you feeling that as well?
Absolutely. What is happening now is not just tragic and awful, but historic. We're seeing the cleansing, and I use that word in quotes, the persecution and cleansing of Christians from throughout what we now call the Islamic world, but that's where Christianity began. This is historic. This has never happened like this before. Oh, there have been pogroms. Christians have had a difficult time, but they have lived and survived in places like Syria for more than 1,500 years, and I say 1,500 years because that about coincides with the advent of Islam, which is a newer religion than Christianity or Judaism. They have survived. It now appears that Christians may not survive anywhere in the Middle East, in the broader Middle East, in the Islamic world. They will be thrown out. This is not just this should be a big story for the news media. It is historically significant, and it is being ignored by the media. It is being ignored by politicians, by diplomats. No one wants to talk about what's happening to Christians and other minorities. At the same time, that the single Jewish state, the size of New Jersey, in an Arab world the size of the United States, is under attack from all sides. But so are the Kurds, so are the Yazidis, every minority, and by the way, so are the more moderate strains of Islam. When the jihadists got into Timbuktu, the first thing they did was blow up mosques and shrines. Why? Because those Muslims weren't practicing Islam as the jihadis said they should.
Amazing. Cliff May, thanks for giving us that alert and for making some sense of it all. We'll talk to you again. Listen, have a great Easter weekend, and we'll talk to you again, Cliff May.
Thank you.